We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis Meseches Beitzah. This is Beitzah Daf 37b. The Gemara says, "Deloka Rabbi Dosa." Our Mishnah does not follow the opinion of Rabbi Dosa. The Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa. Rabbi Dosa Yomer. Rabbi Dosa says. Continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis Meseches Beitzah. This is Beitzah Daf 37b. The Gemara says, "Deloka Rabbi Dosa." Our Mishnah does not follow the opinion of Rabbi Dosa. The Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa, Rabbi Dosa Omer. Rabbi Dosa says, "V'amri lo Abashol Omer." Some people say it's Abashol who says as follows: Halokeach behema mechaveiro me'erev yomtiv. Let's say a person purchases an animal from his friend from before Yontiv, Afal pi shelo mosar lo ela b'Yontiv, even though it was only given to the buyer on Yontiv. Harehi karagli halokeach. It follows the feet. It follows the tchum of the one who bought it. V'hamoser behema l'roen. Let's say somebody gives his animal over to a shepherd. Afal pi shelo mosar lo ela b'Yontiv, even though he only gave over the animal on Yontiv. Harehi karagli haro. It follows the feet of the shepherd. It follows the tchum of the shepherd. And again, that goes against what we said in our Mishnah. In our Mishnah, it said it follows the tchum of the original Bailam. And so the Gemara answers, Afilu Tamer Rabbi Dosa. You can even say that our Mishnah follows the opinion of Rabbi Dosa. V'lokash, it's not difficult. Kan beroa echad. In one case, we're talking about where there's one shepherd. Kan b'shnei roim. In the other case, we're talking about where there are two shepherds. And Rashi over here explains, Kan beroa echad she'ein bo'ir elo roa echad. What we mean to say is, in the entire city, there's only one shepherd. Kol b'nei ha'ir ma'amidin behemtam b'reshus. In such a situation, everybody who lives in the city, they give over their animals to the reshus of this particular roa. He takes care of it. V'niknesh shvisaso, and therefore the animals acquire the shavisa of the shepherd. Hilkach bein mocher bein lokeach daito shelo tikna habeima shvisaso etzlo ela b'shvisas haroa. Therefore, in all situations, doesn't matter who we're talking about, we always say that it takes over the tchum of the roa. Now, our Mishnah is talking about where you have two shepherds. You don't know who it's going to go to. You don't know where the intention of the Bailam is. That's why our Mishnah says that the animals follow the feet of the owners. They go by the tchum of the owner, unless they're by the shepherd from before Yontiv. That's why our Mishnah makes that distinction. And the Gemara continues, Deika we have a proof from the Mishnah to this as well. The Katani, because what does the Mishnah say? It says, Livno o leroa. He gives over the animal to his son or to the shepherd. Again, that indicates that he doesn't know exactly who he's going to give it to. Shema mina. So again, you see that our Mishnah is talking about two roim, meaning it's talking about a situation where you don't know exactly where the animal is going. And therefore, again, if it's given over to the shepherd on Yontiv itself, it's going to follow the feet of the owner. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabba bar Barchana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabba bar Barchana says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Halacha Rabbi Dosa. The halacha is in fact like Rabbi Dosa. Again, it's like Rabbi Dosa that it follows the feet of the shepherd. Gemara says, Umi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Hachi. Does Rabbi Yochanan really say the halacha follows Rabbi Dosa? The Amar Rabbi Yochanan halacha kistam Mishnah. Didn't Rabbi Yochanan say the halacha is like a stam Mishnah? Utznanim, we learned in our Mishnah, Habehema v'akelim karagli habaylim, that the animal and the vessels, they follow the feet of the owners. They don't follow the feet of the shepherd. And the Gemara gives the same answer we just gave. Did we not just say that the Mishnah and Rabbi Dosa are not arguing? In one case, we're talking about one shepherd. If there's only one shepherd, it follows the shepherd. In the other case, we're talking where there are two shepherds, and in that case, it follows the Bailam. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Shnayim shashalu cholok echad b'shutfis. Let's say there are two people, and they borrow as a partnership, they borrow one garment. One person wants to take it on Shachris and use it to go to the Beis HaMedrash. Again, this is talking about where they're borrowing it, let's say, for the purpose of Yontiv. The other one wants to use the garment. He's going to go to a celebration in the evening. They each want to use the garment over Yontiv. Now, this person made an Erev to go to the north. The other partner made an Erev to go to the south. So the halach is as follows. The one who made an Erev to the north, he can only go north to the limit of the amount of space that the person who made an Erev to the south can go. In other words, it's limited by both Techum. And the person who made an Erev to travel south, he can only go south according to the Tchum of the person who made the Erev northward. And that's why the Brisa says over here, let's say you have a situation where they're both going an extreme. One is going totally to the north. The other one is going totally to the south. So now this thing cannot move at all. It won't be able to move at all because, again, you've had an Erev of one Erev is going only north, no south. The other one's going only south, no north. So it comes out that this garment cannot be moved at all over Yontif. And the Gemara continues, Itzmar, we have the following Machlokas Amoraim. Shnayim shalachu chavesu behema b'shutfus. Let's say you have two people and they purchase a barrel and they purchase an animal as a partnership. They want to use it over Yontif. They want to divide it up. So in other words, one partner will take some of the wine, the other will take the rest of the wine. One partner will take part of the behema after they shecht it. The other will take other parts of the behema. So Rav amar chavis muteres ubehema asura. So Rav says the stuff in the barrel, that's mutter. You can each take it to your own tchum. In other words, the wine, let's say, that the first person is taking is not bound by the tchum of the second person and vice versa. But the behema, when you shecht up the behema, that animal is bound by the tchum of both individuals. It's usher to go beyond any area that's common to both partners. Shmuel Amar, and Shmuel says, chavis nami asur. He's even stricter. He says even the wine in the barrel is also usher. It is bound by the tchum of both of them. And so the Gemara says, Ma'ai kosava Rav. What exactly does Rav hold? I understand Shmuel, he doesn't make a distinction. He says the item starts out as one thing, one unified thing at the beginning of Yontif. It keeps that tchum. But according to Rav, what does he hold? Why does he make a distinction between the wine and the barrel and the animal? Yesh breira. If he holds there's a concept of breira. Breira means retroactively. In other words, retroactively something is clarified. That's what breira means. So for example, in the case of the wine, after we divide up the wine, it becomes clear all along that this particular wine belonged to this particular partner, and the other wine belonged to the other partner. Yesh breira would mean that we look back and we say all along it was really considered like it was divided. That would mean that we should not bind the items to the tchum of the other person. So again, ikosavar yesh breira. If Rav holds there is breira, afilu behema tishtri. So even the animal should be permitted. We should say whatever part of the animal this person got, that was his all along. It follows his tchum. V'ikosavar ein breira. And if Rav holds in general, there's no concept of breira. Afilu chavis nami asura. So even the situation of the barrel should be asur. We don't know which wine belonged to whom until later on. All the wine should be bound by the tchum of both of them. And so the Gemara says, Liolam kosavar yesh breira. Really, Rav holds that there is a concept of breira, and therefore everything should be permitted. V'shanyu behema d'kayanki techumin mehadadi. But Rav holds that an animal is different because at the time that it's alive, all the different parts of the animal were taking were giving nutrients to one another, and therefore they're all bound they're all bound together totally. And therefore, since they're completely bound together, the tchum cannot change. In other words, the difference is wine is not a living creature, so one part of the wine is not dependent on the other. But when it comes to the animal, so all the parts of the animal are completely linked, and therefore the tchum remains the same. You can't say with breira that this part of the animal has a different tchum of the other part of the animal. So the Gemara continues, Amri le Rav Kahana v'Ravasi l'Rav. So Rav Kahana and Rav Asi said to Rav, they didn't like this answer that the tchum is yonik from one another, because they say as follows: Le'isur muksa lo chashashu. We're not worried about this by muksa. In other words, you don't say, well, since one part of the animal belonged to the other partner, so you can't say, well, since it belongs to the other partner, it should be muksa for me, because I never wanted to use it. I designated it for the other partner. I didn't have it in mind. And therefore, everything is yonek from each other. Everything is linked together, so everything should be muksa. We don't say that. We don't call the animal muksa because at the beginning of Yontif, it wasn't clear which part belonged to whom. So le'isr tchumin chashu. So therefore, suddenly by tchumin, we're going to say this new concept over here that one part of the animal is linked to the other, and therefore the tchum is always linked. So to that, shasik Rav. So Rav was quiet. He had no answer to that question, why we make a distinction between the isr tchumin and the isr of muksa. In any case, the Gemara continues, my havelo, what is the final halacha when it comes to breira? Rav Hoshia amar yesh breira, Rabbi Yochanan amar ein breira. It's a machlokes amoraim. Rav Hoshia says there is a concept of breira. Rabbi Yochanan says there's no concept of breira. And so the Gemara continues, V'savar Rav Hoshia yesh breira. Does Rav Hoshia really hold that there's a concept of breira? Vatnan, but we learned in a Mishnah, Hameis babayis, let's say you have a dead body in a house, V'lo psachim harbe, there are many doors in the house, so the halacha is, Kulan Tameim, all of the doors are tamei. They're all places where you might bring this mace out the door. You might have the mace exit. Niftach echad mehan. Now let's say one of the openings, one of the entrances is open. So hu tamei v'kulan tahorim. So then the one that's open, that becomes tamei, and everything else becomes tahor. Chashav lotzio be'echad mehan. Let's say the person had in mind he's going to take the mace out one particular door, o bechalon, or out one particular window. Sheyeshvo al arba, that it's 4 by 4 tfachim. So matzeles al apsachim kul. And the fact that you have in mind to take it out one particular one, so all the other entrances, they are going to be saved. They're not going to have the tumah. Beis Shammai omer, Beis Shammai say v'hu shechishev olav ad shelo yamas hameis. You have to have this in mind before the person died. Once the person died, it's too late. Beis Hillel omer, Beis Hillel say no, af misha yamas hameis. Even if you have in mind after the person died, so then that's still going to be okay. That's going to save the other areas. The Itmar Allah, and it was learned on this Mishnah, Amar Rav Hoshea, that Rav Hoshea says, L'tares apsachim mikanu lahaba. This whole issue over here is only to say that the areas of the entrance are tar from now forward. In other words, we're not going to say retroactively that if you have in mind. Beis Hillel wouldn't go so far. Beis Hillel wouldn't say that if you have in mind after the person dies, then retroactively anything that was in those doorways is going to be tar, meaning we're not going to apply the concept of breira. Mikanu ulahaba'in, meaning from now forward, from the time you make the decision where you're bringing the mace, that's where we say the areas of the doorways are tahor. Lemafrei alo, but we're not going to apply it retroactively. So again, it seems like Rav Hoshea does not hold of breira. That's a contradiction to what we just said. We just said Rav Hoshea says yesh breira. And so the Gemara answers, Epoch, you're right, you have to reverse it. Rav Hoshea Amar ein breira. It's Rav Hoshea who really says that there's no breira. Rav Yochanan Amar yesh breira. And it's Rav Yochanan who says that there is a concept of breira. But the Gemara continues, Umiyisleil Rav Yochanan breira. Does Rav Yochanan really hold to the concept of breira? Yamar Ravasi, Yamar Rav Yochanan, but Ravasi says in the name of Rav Yochanan, Ha'achin shecholku lekuchosein. Let's say you have brothers and they divide up a Yerusha, they divide up an inheritance, so they're considered like they're buying from one another. Umachzirin zela ze biyovel, and when Yovel comes, just like when you have a purchaser, you have to return it to the original person who sold it on Yovel, so too they have to return it to its original state, and Yovel to its original, so to speak, undivided state. And Rashi over here explains, Lekucho, saying again, the brothers are considered buyers. We don't say that we use breira to say that whatever this particular brother gets, that was his all along, it's his Yerusha. V'Yerusha ina choseres biyovel. Now the halach, of course, is an inheritance. Let's say there was only one son, an inheritance doesn't go back on Yovel. But we don't say that. We don't say it's considered a Yerusha all along to the son. We rather say maybe the portion that the first brother got really went to the second brother. It was really his portion, right? They really have exchanged it. They're considered purchasers. It's considered like they exchanged their portions. So in other words, whatever you got was not necessarily your Yerusha, but you exchanged it with your brother, you divided it up. According to that opinion, they're really lekuchos. It's considered like they purchased it from one another. And at Yovel, everything's going to revert to the original, and they're going to have to redivide, so to speak. So again, so you see from this, if you're holding their lekuchos, you see there's no breira according to Rabbi Yochanan. And if you're going to try to answer, ki lesle the Rabbi Yochanan breira b'doraisa. Maybe Rabbi Yochanan does not hold of breira by issues that are midoraisa. When you're talking here about issues of Yerusha, those are doraisa issues. That's why Rabbi Yochanan says they're considered lekuchos and there's no breira. Avol b'drabanan islay, but you'll make a distinction and you'll say that by issues that are midrabanan. So then we would say that there is going to be breira. Rashi over here says b'doraisa lamon keneged dvar Torah kagon Yovel. For example, here we have an issue of doraisa of Yovel. Yovel would be an issue of doraisa that applies to this property. So lo samchin na breira. We're not going to rely on breira and say, well, they should be considered they should be considered to be yorshim, it's considered to be a Yerusha because of breira, and therefore we don't need to worry about Yovel. Maybe very old, you don't hold of breira. Aval b'derabanan lamud keneged iser tchum in derabanan. Let's say you're talking about something that's like an iser tchum, which is only derabanan. So samchin na breira, there we would rely on breira. Hilka chavis ubehema mutarm. So for example, by the case of tchum, of the barrel of the animal would be mutter, you could take it to the person's own tchum, because we would rely on breira. We would say that that portion belonged to that person all along. So maybe you'll suggest that. But uv'derabanan miyasle, but is that really true? Does Rabbi Yochanan really hold the breira when it comes to a derabanan issue? V'atani Ayo, but Ayo taught as follows. Rabbi Yehuda says, "In adam masna al shnei devarim ke'echad." Rabbi Yehuda says a person is not allowed to make a condition on two things at once. Eloi in b'chacham lemizrach eruv lemizrach. Rather, if the chacham comes from the east side, the eruv is understood to be to the east, and lemayrev eruv lemayrev. But if it's to the west, so we say that the eruv is to the west. V'ilu lekanu lekan lo, and we do not say that it goes in both directions. And Rashi over here says, Ein adam masna al shnei devarim ke'echad be'eruvin tanan. Rashi explains that an eruv in the Mishnah says as follows: Masna adam al eruvo meiniach shnei eruvin. A person can make a condition when they set up an eruv tchum, and they can make two eruvin. Sheshama sha'asid chacham lavo samach l'eruv v'soch dal apayim lidrosh b'ram. The case, let's say, is as follows: you hear that there's a Talmud chacham coming to the city, going to give a drasha. You don't know exactly from where. Ve'enu yodeim lemizrachim lemayrev. You don't know if he's coming from the east, from the west. So Omer, he can say as follows: In b'chacham lemizrach eruvi shevemizrach yikna lishavisa, b'lemayrev eruvi shevemayrev yikna. In other words, if it comes from the east, then I want to travel to the east. I want that eruv to work. If he comes from the west, I want to travel west. I want that eruv to work. Ba lekan ulekan. Now let's say it's both directions. So let's say you have a situation where two chachamim come to the various places. So Eilech ve'ever lemachar. So then I'm going to go. I'll figure it out tomorrow. I'll figure out tomorrow where I want to go, and it'll work retroactively. Now the point over here is you can't do this without breira. Because when he's going to choose tomorrow, if he's choosing tomorrow which direction he wants to go, so you're really saying, oh, breira, retroactively, it's clear that's where he wanted to go all along. So that's what the Mishnah said. Now what Ayo is teaching here is that Rabbi Yehuda argues and says as follows. You can't make a condition when there are two chachamim. Lomar lemocher ever. Say, oh, tomorrow I'll choose which direction I want to go, and retroactively that's my choice. Because if he's going to make the choice tomorrow, who says that worked? And we don't say it's hovra lemafreya. We don't say that it works retroactively, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Ches Amud Aleph.